The planet called New Haven was everything humanity had dreamed of when they first looked up at the stars. Green fields stretched across rolling hills. Clear rivers ran through valleys filled with wildflowers. Children played under a sky painted in soft shades of purple and gold as two gentle suns set on the horizon. Dr. Lisa Morgan stood at the window of her office and watched the students running across the courtyard below. She had spent 15 years building the New Haven Academy into the finest school outside of Earth. Nearly 3,000 children lived and learned within these walls. They came from dozens of human colonies, sent by parents who wanted them to have the best education humanity could offer. Lisa smiled as she watched a group of young boys chasing each other around the fountain. A little girl sat alone on a bench, reading a book that was probably too advanced for her age. These were humanity's future. Scientists, artists, explorers, and dreamers. They represented everything good about the human spirit. Her communicator buzzed. She glanced at the message and frowned. Admiral Daniel Carter wanted to speak with her. She accepted the call, and the Admiral's face appeared on her screen. He was a man in his late 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. But those eyes were sharp. They had seen too much to ever truly rest. "Dr. Morgan," he said, "how are the children?" "Wonderful as always, Admiral." "To what do I owe this call?" Carter paused. That pause told Lisa everything she needed to know. "I want you to run emergency drills this week," he said. "Full evacuation procedures. Make sure the underground shelters are stocked and ready." Lisa felt a cold sensation in her chest. "Daniel, what's happening?" "Probably nothing. The Vexery have been moving ships near our border. The Galactic Council says it's just routine patrol activity." He shook his head slowly. "But I don't trust them. I've never trusted them." The Vexery Dominion was one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. They were tall, insect-like creatures with hard shells and cold eyes. They had conquered dozens of species over thousands of years. When humanity first entered the galactic community, the Vexery had looked at them the way a predator looks at potential prey. "The Council won't let them attack a civilian colony," Lisa said. "There are laws, treaties, laws written by species who have never had to fight for their survival." Carter's voice was bitter. "The Council thinks we're children playing with toys we don't understand. They won't protect us, Lisa. They never have." Lisa looked back at the children in the courtyard. The boys had stopped running. Now they were helping the little girl catch a butterfly that had landed on a flower. "I'll run the drills," she said quietly. "Thank you. And Lisa, if anything happens, get the children underground. Don't wait for orders. Don't wait for anything. Just get them safe." The call ended. Lisa stood alone in her office for a long time, far across the galaxy. Ambassador Kevin Price was having the worst day of his career. He stood before the Galactic Council, a massive circular chamber filled with representatives from 100 different species. They towered over him on raised platforms, looking down at the small human with expressions ranging from boredom to contempt. "The evidence is clear," Price said, his voice steady despite his frustration. "Vexery warships have entered human territory 17 times in the past month. They have scanned our colonies. They have disrupted our communications. This is not routine patrol activity. This is preparation for invasion." The Vexery representative rose from his platform. His name was High Commander Vrexis, and he was ancient even by Vexery standards. His shell was scarred from countless battles. His voice clicked and hissed as he spoke. "The human ambassador speaks from fear, not fact. The Vexery Dominion has no interest in your primitive colonies. We simply ensure that your expansion does not threaten established territories. New Haven is 300 light years from your nearest world," Price shot back. "It threatens nothing. Your species threatens everything." Rexus leaned forward. "You breed like insects. You spread like disease. In 200 years, you have colonized more worlds than most species claim in 10,000. The galaxy watches your growth with concern. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The council speaker, a massive crystalline being called the Harmonist, raised a limb for silence. The council acknowledges human concerns, but finds no evidence of hostile intent. This matter is closed. Price wanted to scream. He wanted to grab these ancient, complacent aliens and shake them until they understood. But he was a diplomat, so he simply bowed his head. The council's wisdom is noted, he said coldly. Humanity will remember this day. He walked out of the chamber alone. Commander Nathan Brooks stood on the bridge of the defense ship, Resilience, and stared at the tactical display. 12 ships. That was all he had to protect an entire colony. 12 ships against an empire that had conquered half the galaxy. Sir? His first officer, a young woman named Rachel, looked at him with worried eyes. New orders from Earth Command. Brooks took the datapad and read the message. His jaw tightened. They're sending reinforcements. 20 ships from the Third Fleet. When will they arrive? 6 days. Rachel said nothing. They both knew what that meant. If the Vexery attacked before then, they were on their own. Brooks looked out the viewport at New Haven spinning slowly below. From here, he could see the lights of the capital city. Somewhere down there, children were going to sleep, safe and warm, dreaming of tomorrow. He would die before he let anything happen to them. All ships to yellow alert, he ordered. I want continuous scans of the border. Anything larger than an asteroid, I want to know about it. Yes, sir. Brooks touched the glass of the viewport. The stars looked so peaceful, so quiet. He knew that peace was an illusion. On New Haven, Dr. Lisa Morgan finished her evening rounds. She walked through the dormitories, checking on sleeping children, adjusting blankets, turning off forgotten lights. She stopped at the room of the little girl she had seen reading earlier. The girl was asleep now, her book still clutched in her small hands. Lisa gently took the book and placed it on the nightstand. She brushed a strand of hair from the girl's face. Sweet dreams, she whispered. She didn't know that in 3 days. This child would be dead. She didn't know that in 3 days. Everything would change. All she knew was that tonight, the children were safe. Tonight, there was still hope. And she held on to that hope with everything she had. The attack came at dawn. Commander Nathan Brooks was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee when the alarm started screaming. He dropped the cup and ran to the tactical display. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. 40-7 Visari warships had appeared at the edge of the system. They were not patrol vessels. They were dreadnoughts. Planet killers. All ships to battle stations, Brooks shouted. Get me a channel to New Haven Command, now. His communications officer shook her head. They're jamming everything, sir. We can't reach the surface. Brooks stared at the approaching fleet. 47 against 12. Those were not odds. That was a death sentence. But between those ships and the planet below were 3,000 children. All ships formed defensive line, he ordered. His voice was calm. His hands were steady. We hold them here. We hold them as long as we can. The Resilience surged forward. 11 other ships followed. They knew they were going to die. They charged anyway. On the surface, Dr. Lisa Morgan was eating breakfast with the children when the sky turned orange. She looked up through the cafeteria windows and saw fire falling from the heavens. Everyone down. She screamed. The first orbital strike hit the Western District. The explosion was so bright it burned shadows into walls. The shockwave shattered every window in the academy. Children screamed as glass rained down on them. Lisa grabbed the nearest students and started running. To the shelters. Everyone to the shelters. But there was no time. The Vexery had done their homework. They knew exactly where the academy was. They knew exactly how many children were inside. And they had decided that those children were a threat. In the cold logic of the Vexery command, human children would grow into human soldiers, human explorers, human colonizers. Better to kill them now than face them later. The second strike hit the academy directly. Lisa was running through the main hallway when the world exploded. She threw herself over a group of small children, covering them with her body as fire and debris filled the air. She felt the heat on her back. She felt the pain as something sharp cut into her spine, but she didn't move. She held those children tight and prayed. When the dust settled, she couldn't feel her legs. The children beneath her were crying, but alive. She had saved 7 of them. 2,993 others were not so lucky. In orbit. The Resilience was burning. Commander Brooks coughed blood as he pulled himself back to his command chair. Half his bridge crew was dead. The ship was torn open in a dozen places. Only 3 human vessels were still fighting, but they had bought time. 30 precious minutes for evacuation ships to launch from New Haven's surface. "Sir," Rachel whispered. She was bleeding from a wound on her head. "We can't hold much longer." Brooks looked at the tactical display. The Vexery fleet was moving past them now, heading for the planet. They had stopped bothering to fight the human ships. They were beneath notice. "Get me a channel to the evacuation fleet," Brooks ordered. "Tell them to run. Don't stop. Don't look back." He watched the Vexery ships begin their bombardment of the planet below. Columns of fire rose from the surface. Cities vanished in nuclear light. "God forgive them," he whispered. "Because we never will." The Resilience died 3 minutes later. Commander Brooks died at his post. He never knew that 18 evacuation ships made it out. He never knew that his sacrifice saved 11,000 lives. But he knew, in his final moment, that he had done everything he could. It was enough. The footage reached Earth 6 hours later. It showed everything. The burning cities, the destroyed academy, the bodies of children scattered across playgrounds and classrooms. It showed Dr. Lisa Morgan, paralyzed and bleeding, still holding the children she had saved until rescue workers found her. She died on the evacuation ship. Her last words were names. The names of children she couldn't save. Admiral Daniel Carter watched the footage alone in his office. He watched it 3 times. He memorized every face, every name, every single child who had trusted humanity to protect them. Then he turned off the screen. For 72 hours, Earth went silent. No communications. No diplomatic responses. No reactions to the 100 messages flooding in from across the galaxy. Human ships stopped moving. Human colonies locked down. Every human in the galaxy seemed to hold their breath at the same moment. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. Ambassador Price did not attend. His seat remained empty. The Vexery celebrated. High Commander Vrexis gave speeches about cleansing the human threat. He promised that New Haven was only the beginning. Other colonies would follow until humanity learned its place. Other species watched with growing unease. "Why are they so quiet?" a Rithani diplomat asked. "Humans are never quiet. They should be screaming, crying, demanding justice." "Perhaps they are afraid," a Vexery ambassador suggested. "Perhaps they finally understand their weakness." An old Corthan philosopher, a member of a species that had watched the rise and fall of 1,000 empires, shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "I have seen this silence before. Long ago, when my people made the same mistake the Vexery have made today." "What do you mean?" The Corthan looked at the stars through the council chamber's windows. "The prey does not fall silent from fear. The prey screams. The prey runs." He paused. "It is the predator that goes quiet before it strikes." On the 3rd day, Admiral Carter emerged from his office. His staff barely recognized him. Something had changed behind his eyes. The tired, patient commander they knew was gone. Something older stood in his place. Something harder. He walked to the main command center where every senior officer in Earth's military waited in silence. He stood before them and spoke full words. "Activate Project Prometheus." The officers stared at him. "Sir," one general said carefully, "Project Prometheus is classified. It requires unanimous approval from the Global Council." The political implications. The Global Council approved it this morning, unanimously. Carter's voice was flat, empty. Every human colony has been informed. Every human ship has received new orders. He looked at the faces around him. They killed our children. 12,417 children died on New Haven. I know each of their names. I will carry those names until I die. He pressed a button on the command console. The galaxy thought they knew what humanity was. They thought we were young, foolish, weak. His eyes burned with cold fire. They were wrong. Deep beneath the surface of a dozen hidden moons, lights began to turn on for the first time in 50 years. Ships that had never appeared on any registry began to power up god weapons that no alien species had ever seen began to arm themselves and humanity. For the first time since it reached the stars, prepared to show the galaxy what it truly was. The silence was over. The reckoning had begun. The galaxy had always underestimated humanity. When humans first made contact with alien species, they were dismissed as primitives from a death world. Earth was considered a nightmare planet. Too hot, too cold, too much gravity, too many predators, too many diseases. The fact that humans had survived there at all was seen as a statistical accident. The older species looked at humanity and saw children playing with dangerous toys. They saw a young race that had barely discovered fire in cosmic terms. They saw no threat. They were fools. What they never understood was simple. Humans had survived Earth because they were survivors. They had climbed to the top of their planet's food chain, not through strength or speed, but through cunning, cooperation, and an absolute refusal to die. And when humanity looked up at the stars and saw a galaxy full of empires that had grown soft in their ancient power, they did something no other species had ever done. They prepared. Project Prometheus had been born 50 years ago. In the darkest corners of human military planning, the generals who created it understood something that politicians refused to accept. The galaxy was not safe. The treaties meant nothing. The laws protected no one. So humanity built in secret. On Luna, Admiral Carter stood before a massive window looking down at the lunar surface. What had once been barren rock was now covered with enormous shipyards, hidden beneath holographic camouflage. Dozens of warships were powering up their engines. More were being completed every hour. How many? Carter asked. General Patricia Stone, commander of Project Prometheus, checked her datapad. As of this morning, 3,200 operational warships. Another 800 will be combat-ready within the week. The Galactic Council believed humanity had 200 ships. They had been told that humanity's industrial capacity was limited. They had been shown carefully falsified reports and production numbers. They had believed every lie. What about the special weapons? Carter asked. All platforms are online. The Hammer systems are targeting every major Vexery installation. The ghost networks have infiltrated their communications. We know every ship position, every supply line, every weakness. Carter nodded slowly. And the ground forces? 20 million soldiers have been activated. Another 50 million reservists are mobilizing. Stone paused. Sir, we have enough firepower to destroy the Vexery Dominion 10 times over. But once we use these weapons, the whole galaxy will know what we've been hiding. Let them know. Stone hesitated. Sir, some of our allies. We have no allies. Carter's voice was ice. The council watched the Vexery murder our children and did nothing. Every species in that chamber chose their own comfort over justice. They are not our allies. They never were. He turned from the window and walked toward the command center. His officers fell in behind him. Send word to Ambassador Price. I want him to deliver one final message to the Galactic Council. Former Ambassador Kevin Price had spent the last 3 days in his quarters. Watching the news feeds from New Haven, he had not eaten. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of children burning. When the message from Admiral Carter arrived, he read it twice. Then he put on his formal diplomatic uniform for the last time and walked to the council chamber. The chamber was in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. The Vexery ambassador was giving another speech about human aggression and the need for controlled reduction of human colonies. Price walked to his platform. The noise slowly died as delegates noticed his presence. The human ambassador returns, High Commander Vrexus said with amusement. Have you come to beg for peace? Price looked at the Vexery. He looked at the hundreds of other species watching him. Then he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. No, he said. I've come to say goodbye. He pressed a button on his console. Holographic displays flickered to life throughout the chamber, showing live feeds from across human space. Ships. Thousands of ships, emerging from hidden bases on moons, asteroids, and planets that had been dismissed as worthless. Warships larger than anything the galaxy had seen in 10,000 years. Weapons platforms that could crack planets open like eggs. The chamber went silent. For 50 years, humanity has prepared for this moment, Price said. We hoped it would never come. We prayed that the galaxy would prove us wrong, that the treaties would hold, that justice would mean something. He looked directly at Vrexus. You proved us right. This is impossible, a Rathani delegate stammered. You don't have the resources, the technology. Our intelligence said, your intelligence saw what we wanted you to see. Price's voice was calm. Every factory you visited was fake. Every ship count was false. Every diplomatic smile was a mask. He pulled out his diplomatic credentials and threw them on the floor. I hereby resign as humanity's ambassador to this council. My species no longer recognizes your authority, your laws, your treaties. He stepped back from the platform. You had the chance to stand with us. You chose to stand aside. Now watch what happens when humanity stops pretending to be weak. He walked toward the exit. Wait, Vrexus shouted. You cannot threaten the Dominion. We have conquered species for less. Price stopped at the door. He turned back one final time. You killed 12,000 children. You burned them alive and called it strategy. His eyes were empty of everything but cold, patient hate. We are not threatening you. We are not negotiating with you. We are coming for you. Every ship, every station, every commander who gave the order. He pointed at Vrexus. Pray to whatever gods you have. They are all that can save you now. He walked out. The doors closed behind him, in the silence that followed. Alarms began to sound across Vexery space. Human ships were crossing the border. Not hundreds, thousands. The Vexery High Command scrambled to respond. But their communications were jammed. Their sensor network showed ghost signals everywhere. Their carefully planned defense lines were already flanked by ships that had appeared from nowhere. In his command bunker, High Commander Vrexus stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. How? He whispered. How did they hide this? How did they build this? His aide, a young officer barely out of training, looked at the screens showing human fleets advancing like a tide of steel and fire. Sir, what do we do? Rexus had conquered 40 worlds. He had destroyed civilizations. He had never known fear. He knew it now. Everything, he said. We throw everything at them. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have. But even as he gave the order, he knew it would not be enough, that the humans were not coming to conquer. They were coming to punish. And there was nothing in the galaxy that could stop them. The Battle of Vexor Prime lasted 6 hours. Military experts across the galaxy had predicted the war would take years. The Vexori Dominion had ruled for millennia. Their fleets were legendary. Their warriors were feared on 1,000 worlds. None of that mattered. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance, and watched the Vexori defense fleet crumble. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, each vessel knowing exactly where to be and when. Vexori commanders gave orders, but their communications were scrambled. They fired weapons, but human ships were already gone, replaced by decoys and ghosts. Sir, the Vexori flagship is attempting to retreat. Carter studied the display. The Vexori command ship was trying to flee toward the planet's dark side, running from a fight. Something no Vexori had done in recorded history. Don't let them. Bring me their commander alive. 20 human ships converged on the fleeing vessel. Precision strikes disabled its engines, its weapons, its shields. Boarding teams cut through the hull like paper. 30 minutes later, High Admiral Craxus, commander of the Vexori home fleet, stood in chains on Carter's bridge. Craxus was old. His shell was covered in medals from 100 campaigns. He had never lost a battle in 300 years of service. Until today. You cannot win, Craxus said. His voice clicked and hissed with barely controlled rage. Even if you destroy our fleet, our people will never surrender. We will fight you for 1,000 years. Carter looked at the Vexori admiral with eyes like frozen steel. I know, he said simply. That's why we're not here to make you surrender. He pressed a button on his console. Holographic screens flickered to life, showing the same footage that had played across Earth. Burning cities. Dead children. Dr. Lisa Morgan bleeding in the ruins of her academy. Do you know what this is? Carter asked. Craxus said nothing. This is New Haven. This is what your species did to 12,000 human children. Carter walked closer to the chained admiral. Every soldier in my fleet has watched this footage. Every pilot. Every Marine. They have memorized the names of the dead. They whisper those names before every battle. He pointed at the screens. You didn't just attack a colony. You didn't just kill civilians. You murdered children. And you called it strategy. Carter's voice dropped to barely a whisper. We are going to show you what human strategy looks like. The campaign that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human forces did not conquer. They did not occupy. They simply destroyed. Every Vexori military installation was targeted with surgical precision. Shipyards burned. Weapons factories melted into slag. Command bunkers were cracked open, and their occupants dragged into the light. The commanders who had ordered the New Haven attack were hunted across the stars. One by one, they were found. One by one, they faced human justice. Some tried to hide among civilian populations. Human intelligence found them anyway. Strike teams extracted them without harming a single innocent Vexori, because humanity was not here to commit genocide. They were here for something far more terrifying. They were here to prove a point. General Stone led the ground assault on Vexori military headquarters. Her soldiers moved through the complex with cold efficiency. They passed Vexori civilians without a glance. They ignored cowering bureaucrats and screaming administrators. They wanted only the warriors. In the central command chamber, Stone found what she was looking for. The Vexori War Council. 12 ancient commanders who had approved the attack on New Haven. They sat frozen at their table, surrounded by human marines pointing weapons at their heads. Stone walked among them, reading names from a datapad. Admiral Vraxis, General Corthan, Commander Velis. She stopped at each one. You voted to attack New Haven. You voted to target the Children's Academy. You called it eliminating future threats. She pulled up a holographic image. A little girl with dark hair, smiling at the camera. Her name was Emma. She was 6 years old. She liked to read books about space exploration. She wanted to be an astronaut when she grew up. Another image. A boy with freckles. His name was Danny. He was 8. He played violin. He was learning to speak 3 languages. More images. More names. Stone recited them all. Every single child who had died at the academy. She spoke for nearly 2 hours while the Vexery commanders sat in silence. When she finished, she looked at them with empty eyes. You will remember these names. You will remember these faces. And for the rest of your very short lives, you will understand exactly what you destroyed. The HFY War Council was executed the next morning. Not in anger, not in rage. In perfect, cold silence, across the galaxy, other species watched in horror that the Rathani pulled their fleets back to their home systems. The Corthan closed their borders. The Milani sent desperate messages to Human Command, promising anything if the humans would just stop at the Galactic Council. Representatives who had dismissed humanity for centuries now trembled in their seats. They're not going to stop at the Vexery, a delegate whispered. They're going to come for all of us. But the humans did not attack anyone else. They did not threaten. They did not demand submission from species who had done nothing wrong. They simply continued their methodical destruction of everything that Vexery had built. 3 months after the war began, the HFY Dominion ceased to exist as a military power. Their emperor, hiding in a bunker beneath his palace, watched the reports of his empire's collapse. His greatest fleets were scattered debris. His finest commanders were dead or captured. His war machine, built over thousands of years, had been dismantled in weeks. And aid approached him. Sire, the humans have surrounded the homeworld. They are demanding communication. The Emperor stared at the screen showing human ships filling his sky. What do they want? They say they want to talk. Only talk. The aide paused. They say the killing is over. If you agree to their terms. The Emperor closed his eyes. Pride told him to fight. Honor demanded defiance. But he had seen what human strategy looked like. He had watched his empire burn. Open a channel, he said quietly. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the screen. Your war is over, Carter said. Your military is destroyed. Your commanders are dead. You have nothing left to fight with. The Emperor's voice shook with rage and shame. What do you want? Our complete destruction? Our extinction? Carter was silent for a long moment. No, he said finally. That would make us no better than you. He leaned forward. We want you to remember. We want every Vexery child to learn what happened here. We want your historians to write the truth. And we want you to live with that truth forever. The Emperor stared at the human commander. In those cold eyes, he saw something that frightened him more than any weapon. Restraint. The humans could destroy his entire species. They could burn his worlds and salt the ashes. They had the power. They had the reason, and they were choosing not to. Why? The Emperor whispered. Why spare us? Carter's expression did not change. Because the children we lost would have wanted us to be better than you. He paused. Consider this mercy your final lesson about humanity. We could have been monsters. We chose not to be. The channel closed. The war was over. But the galaxy would never be the same. 1 year after the New Haven massacre, A memorial stood where the academy had once been. It was a simple structure. A wall of white stone stretching across the hillside, carved with 12,417 names. At its center stood a statue of a woman shielding children with her body. Dr. Lisa Morgan, frozen forever in bronze. Protecting the students she had given her life for, Admiral Carter stood before the memorial alone. He came here every month when his duties allowed. He would stand in silence, reading the names, remembering the faces from the footage he had watched 1,000 times. Today was different. Today, the Galactic Council had sent a delegation to witness the memorial's completion. They stood at a respectful distance. Dozens of alien diplomats who had once looked down on humanity with contempt. None of them spoke. None of them dared. Captain Nathan Brooks limped toward the Admiral. He had survived a battle in orbit, barely. Rescue teams had pulled him from the wreckage of the Resilience, with burns covering half his body. He would never command a ship again. But he was alive. He carried a small bouquet of flowers from Earth. Simple daisies, the kind that children picked in summer fields. "Admiral," he said quietly. "Captain." Carter nodded toward the wall. "Have you found her name yet?" Brooks walked slowly along the memorial, reading each name until he found the one he was looking for. Emma Brooks. His niece. 7 years old. She had loved daisies. He placed the flowers at the base of the wall and stood in silence. Across the field, the Galactic Council delegation watched. Among them was the new Vexery ambassador, a young diplomat who had opposed the war from the beginning. He had been chosen specifically because he had no connection to the massacre. A symbol of new beginnings. He approached Carter carefully. "Admiral," he said, "I come to offer my people's formal apology. What was done here was unforgivable. We know this. We will carry this shame forever." Carter looked at the Vexery. There was no hatred in his eyes. Only tiredness. Only grief. "Words are easy," he said. "Actions are what matter. We have demilitarized, as your terms required. We have disbanded our war council. We have opened our historical archives so the truth can be told." The ambassador paused. "What more can we do?" Carter turned back to the memorial. "Teach your children. Make sure they understand what happened here. Make sure they know why it can never happen again." The ambassador bowed his head. "It will be done." 3 hours later, Admiral Carter stood before the Galactic Council for the first time since the war ended. The chamber was packed. Every species had sent their highest representatives. For the first time in history, the human platform stood at the same level as the others. No more looking up. No more being dismissed. Carter spoke without notes. He spoke without anger. He spoke with the quiet certainty of someone who had seen the worst the galaxy had to offer and survived. 1 year ago, this council watched the Vexery murder 12,000 human children. You debated. You discussed. You decided to do nothing. You let the words hang in the air. We do not forgive this. We will never forget it. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. But we did not come here for revenge. We did not burn the Vexery homeworld. We did not demand your submission. We showed mercy when we had every right to show none. Carter's voice hardened. And now we have terms for the future of this galaxy. He activated a holographic display showing human space and its borders. First, no species will ever again attack human civilians. Any assault on human colonies, especially those containing children, will be met with the full force of human military power. There will be no warnings, no negotiations, no second chances, silence. Second, the Galactic Council will establish a new defense treaty. All member species will contribute to a joint force that responds to attacks on any member civilians. What happened to humanity will never happen to anyone again. More silence. But this time, heads were nodding. Third, humanity will share certain technologies with this council. Medical advances, agricultural innovations, terraforming techniques. Carter paused. We will not share our weapons. You have not earned that trust. Perhaps someday you will. A Rethani delegate raised a limb. And if we refuse these terms? Carter smiled. It was not a warm smile. You will not refuse. The terms were accepted unanimously. 6 months later, a new human colony was established 3 systems away from New Haven. They called it Second Hope. The first building completed was a school. Admiral Carter attended the opening ceremony. He watched children running through the corridors, laughing and playing. Their voices echoed off the walls like music. A young teacher approached him. Admiral, the children wanted to show you something. She led him to a classroom where 30 students sat at their desks. On the wall behind them was a mural they had painted together. It showed the New Haven Memorial, surrounded by stars and flowers. At the bottom, in careful letters, were the words, "We remember." Carter stood before the mural, unable to speak. His eyes burned with tears he had not shed in over a year. A small boy raised his hand. Admiral, my mom says you saved the galaxy. Is that true? Carter knelt down to look the boy in the eyes. No, he said softly. I just made sure no one would ever hurt children like you again. The boy thought about this. So you're like a guardian? Carter looked at the mural, at the names, at the future sitting in front of him. Yes, he said. I suppose I am. That night, Carter returned to his ship and stood alone at the viewport. Stars stretched across the darkness like diamonds scattered on black cloth. Somewhere out there, alien species were rebuilding, rethinking, changing. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. His communicator buzzed. A message from the Galactic Council. 3 species had requested to join the new defense treaty. 12 others had asked for humanitarian assistance. For the first time in galactic history, former enemies were working together to protect the innocent. Carter read the message twice. Then he looked back at the stars. We did it, Lisa, he whispered to the darkness. We made something good come from all that pain. I hope you can see it, wherever you are. He thought of the children on Second Hope. He thought of the memorial on New Haven. He thought of every name carved in that white stone wall. They would never be forgotten. And the galaxy would never forget what happened when it threatened humanity's children. The stars were quiet. Now, peaceful, safe. But every species in the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was watching, and they would never stop. Protecting the innocent. The story of the New Haven massacre was taught in schools across the galaxy for 10,000 years. It became a lesson about consequences, about mercy, about the terrible power that sleeps in the hearts of those who have everything to lose. And whenever young aliens asked their parents why humans were treated with such respect, they would be told the same story. Because long ago, someone hurt their children. And the humans showed the galaxy what love truly means. They showed that love is not soft. Love is not weak. Love is the most dangerous force in the universe. And humanity had more of it than the stars could hold.